This is the Listening Project podcast, sharing our stories to amplify our voices, a project of the RPA. We are Richmond organizers who have listened to residents who are the most harmed by some of the biggest polluters in our rich city. These are our stories.
Oh, I'm sure they line the pockets of whoever they need to line. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that the mayor is deeply entrenched in that. Chevron provides all these different services in the community that, from a mayoral standpoint, I guess, you look at that and say, we can't live without this money. So, of course, they're the biggest participant in the community in terms of funding. I would imagine they are. It seems like they are from what I heard they are.
And that was Carrie, a community member, a mother, and just an incredible speaker of truth. And hola, everybody. It's Sol, don't call me Mary. La prima, la profe, excited to be here on our episode, which is called Buying Us Out. And the question that I think we want to really answer is, are they buying us out? Are they paying us off? And how? What does that look like? And so we've heard from our community, we have heard this reoccurring theme. And so this is why we're devoting an entire episode to kind of our local economy here in Richmond being dependent on Chevron. And I want to welcome a very, very special guest in a second and recognize that Danny Saki is not here today with us because she got a full-time job at Sierra Club and she is going to be the Bay Area organizer. So if you are not a Sierra Club member, you make sure that you get on that membership. And we will have her back, of course. But for this episode, we have Kendall Johnson, who has worked with the Richmond Progressive Alliance and has been part of the Listening Project. And I will allow her to introduce her badass self.
Hey y'all, I'm Kendall. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm so excited to be here with Alfredo and Marisol today and to talk about all the different aspects in which Chevron uses their money to change the course of Richmond. And yeah, I grew up within Richmond and El Cerrito and have a lot of experience organizing and learning about the way that Chevron influences our local industries and politics. So excited to be here today and be in conversation with all of you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us, Kendall. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Alfredo here. Super excited for this episode. Kendall, you are a badass, so I'm glad that we were able to have you here today with us. This week's episode, like Sol said, Buying Us Out is really about the ways in which Chevron uses its money to excuse the damage that it does to the community, to our land, to our water, to our politics, like we've talked all throughout this podcast, how they try to get us to look the other way using their big wallet. We've heard a ton in our interviews about all of the different ways in which they use this money to buy us out and, to an extent, really lock us in also. This rhetoric we've heard over and over again. So let's dive into some clips from our interviews and see how the community feels. We're gonna listen to Courtney first, and then Randy and Lisbeth, three super awesome community members. Lisbeth is actually joining us on the listening project as a youth organizer, which we are super excited for. Lisbeth is another total badass. So we're excited to have her on board. But let's start.
A very high role. They have the funding, they have the financial means to be friendly neighbors, distributing, so to speak, like backpacks, once a year or something. Kind of feels like a buy-off to the community, but that's not helping us. We need doctors, nurses, we need hospitals. We need a hospital, for low-income people. So that if anything that happened like in 2016 happens again, we'll be more prepared.
because they think that we're not going to stand up and talk with ourselves. They figured if we throw if we throw $10,000 when they're like $100 billion corporation, that this will suffice people and they won't say anything and that'd be okay. And that's not the case. Like, me as a community member, I remember when Chevron, like, they used to call it the 18 check, to where with Chevron, whenever had a fire or explosion and it was pushing the air, people went to the hospital and they put the money because you couldn't get when you're 18. Like, that was a running joke, right? Because that's what was happening in the community. And that's how the community took it upon it as. And Chevron takes advantage of that.
Like, I think one of the things is like, there's like a lot of college students here, like in Richmond. And I know every single one of my siblings has gotten the Richmond Promise scholarship that I didn't even know until recently that Chevron sponsors. And I know that, like, when it comes to taxes, like, I don't know a lot about like economics and things like that, but I do hear people a lot talking about like, oh, like Chevron like pays a lot of taxes and things like that. But at the same time, I'm like, what amount of money is worth like all of our lives? So that's just something that like makes me concerned, because I'm like, well, eventually, like, Chevron's not gonna be here forever. So like when they do eventually leave, like, it's like people who don't know that much about like environmental justice and things like that, are they all gonna like be super freaked out because of financial things? So I feel like financially, that's what scares me, because I think a lot of people think that Chevron really does support us financially. And sometimes when people ask things about that, I'm like, I don't even know what to say because I don't have the answer.
Yeah, we hear, from Carrie in the beginning and Courtney and Randy and Lisbeth talk about like how Chevron is really like lining the city's pockets in a way, trying to buy us out with like backpacks and stuff, when really there's a massive need for like hospitals and other programs. Courtney also in the beginning was referring to the 2012 fire. I know she said 2016.
Absolutely. And so I think that as we come to this work, we have been doing research. We've been working with other and belonging institutes and CBE researchers to really do a deeper dive in what does it look like of the support that Chevron actually gives to our city through one way or another. And some of these, why we really wanted to uplift these different voices, because there's just a plethora of voices that touch on so many different ways that they feel Chevron supports our city economically. And so the 2012 fire was actually one of the only few times that Chevron has supported us through a community benefits initiative. And that was fought tooth and nail by city council and a result of a class action lawsuit. And it essentially created the modernization project, which we'll talk about a little bit further in the episode. But I definitely just want to say that, we hear, okay, Chevron is paying us out in so many of these ways, or buying us out in so many ways, but it's not because they have for 100 years. It's actually more recent that they were forced to. Not because that they decided the community's health and well-being and economy was super important, simply because they were forced to. And so we're going to actually be listening to some other community members, including Alfonso and Saeed, really go deeper into their thoughts of Chevron buying us out. So let's listen in.
Yeah, I'll also add before we play, like, there's this history of Chevron contributing to like political campaigns and really putting money into like having the city run in the way that they want. And there very recently, it has this narrative of them like supporting the community in this way come forward. And it's like because of lawsuits, because they have to. So let's play these clips.
All I know is, like I said, I got, we've had multiple chemical spills. I know that, you know, a lot of our family members and friends are breathing in this air and they have no choice. And I know that me as a, you know, a child, I was able to get this money called 18 money. And I know anybody in Richmond, if you were born in the years of, I want to say 1980 and 1990, you know what 18 money is. And so 18 money was just like some money that you get when you turn 18 and put it in a Wells Fargo account. It could be anywhere from $5,000 to about $20,000. And it's money because of a chemical spill that our parents had to go sign up with and talk to lawyers back in the day, I want to say 91, 92, around that time. They signed up for a chemical spill, and then we had to wait until we was 18 to get that money. So that's what I know about Chevron. That's the only thing that Chevron has actually, that I can say that was tangible that I received from Chevron. I can't really say too much more about it. I know it's not harm. I know it's harming Richmond. I know it's not helping Richmond. I know that.
What they're doing is they're poverty pimping at the end of the day. They're trying to like wash their hands through other nonprofits by like money laundering and can get their tax write-offs. Because at the end of the day, they have the ability to just say, hey, we gave $1 million, $2 million to the community. We want that money back. So, or maybe not all of it, but they know the business. They have corporate tax deductions for so many things, you know, it's endless. And so those subsidies, those kind of things don't go directly to us. They're making money off of giving us money. So that to me is just kind of like it's beyond me, like how we're allowing this to just still kind of be enabled in our community. It's not good behavior. We know it's not like clean money. We know it's like, obviously they're going to require you to say, hey, you know, they're all right. You know, like there's just so many like loopholes that they have and they go through that it's not like even like funny how they get away with it, because they're just slapping us in our face and saying, hey, did you like that? How about, you know, another one? So it's just like, it's not cool because we're getting treated a certain way. They're still making money off of helping us. And they're still, which is kind of the problem, is like they're making money, they're extracting resources from us. It's such a depletion of everything, of all of us, that like we have our livelihood still, and it's not fair. They're making money off of us no matter what, and we have nothing in return. We only get like, you know.
Absolutely. And so this has been a reoccurring theme. We've heard Randy talk about it, Alfonso talk about it, Saeed talk about 18 money, and we've lightly touched this actually in another episode on our public health. And so this 18 money was $180 million settlement from General Chemical, which is now known as Chemtrade, which provides sulfuric acid that is used at the refinery. And so in 1993, there was a chemical leak. And what we've heard from community members is that chemical leak of sulfuric acid that was from the General Chemical Company transporting it to the refinery, it leaked, and people all the way out into East County saw the plumes of smoke. For 24 hours, it was just looming over people. And so this is, again, it's not Chevron paying us out, but it was a chemical company that supplies products that are needed to refine crude oil. So it's a risk that we have when we live next to a refinery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly the point I was about to make, that like even if it's not coming directly from Chevron itself, there's all of these other processes that happen, all of these other chemical processes, chemicals that are brought into the community to support Chevron. And so like people, I think that's why people, like when we talked, we really heard people talk about this 18 money as coming from Chevron, even though it was not. It was from what is now Chemtrade. But like all of these processes bring a ton of harm to the community. And like this wasn't even really coming from Chevron, there, like you touched on earlier, there's one time really that we've seen Chevron pay the community directly, and that's in 2012. They paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical bills because of the 15,000 people that they sent to the hospital that day. And there's also, besides that, they were sued by the federal government for violating, I believe it's called the Clean Air Act. But so that's to the point that like this 18 money, all of the previous settlements weren't really there. And so let's listen now to Alfonso and Adi, sorry about that, give us some examples of another way in which they are buying us out.
I've learned that, even, even the shelters around in Richmond have a lot of funding that comes from Chevron. And it infuriates me because it's kind of like a payoff to killing us. And the ones that are using the homelessness services or whatnot, they don't really have a lot of support to speak about the environment or even have a comprehensive understanding of what's going on. So to use that charity work to hide the actual, irreversible damages that this industry is impacting us with is, I think, disgusting. They always put, what do you call them? Fundraisings for kids to go to school. They donate to law enforcement with a blind eye. They do all kinds of things in the community that doesn't make the community members feel like there's a cohesive community.
And that was Ida, a community organizer for the Safe Return Project, really talking about this corporate tactic, using charity work as a corporate tactic. And I think that narrative we heard over and over from our community around just how much money they put into our community to buy us out. And so to go a little bit deeper into why, how did it come to the fact that they are donating and they historically haven't donated except really in 2012 started donating on an real annual basis, was from the modernization project, just essentially allotted $35 million over 10 years through negotiations with the city of Richmond. And what came out of that was the ECIA grants, which is the Environment and Community Invested Agreement, and the Richmond Promise, which essentially gives scholarships to high schoolers to then go to college. So Alfredo, do you want to explain a little bit more about those grants?
Yeah, so like what does this ECIA grant look like? What this is like you said, annual allocations of like $375,000. These grants funded through the modernization program are, like you said, the result of a negotiation between the city of Richmond and Chevron since about 2016 for the next 10 years. They're providing grants that are anywhere from like $5,000 to like $50,000 to nonprofits that provide services focused on like community, youth sports that like cater to Richmond residents. And like another thing that we've heard, like Lisbeth and you briefly touched on, was the Richmond Promise, which I think most of our community members know about. This is really a scholarship program that was also created as part of this agreement from the modernization program. It provides scholarships for college students who graduated from high schools in Richmond, created from this $35 million over the next 10 years that is from the ECIA grants. And so like it comes back to this point that Alfonso was making, that like all of this money is like dark money, like they're throwing a bunch of money into the community, but like what expense, you know, like they're a big, massive part of our budget, which we're going to talk about later. But like, yeah, at what expense does all this money come from?
And Kendall, do you have any thoughts on any of this?
Yeah, I think in my organizing experience, big corporations like Chevron have been a really, really big opponent of any corporation paying their fair share. So the community has come together several times in the past to demand accountability from corporations in the community. As Alfonso mentioned, there are endless loopholes in which companies steal resources from the Richmond community. In California, there is a tax loophole called Prop 13, where the year you buy your property taxes freezes, and it determines the amount you pay for the rest of the time you own that land. And that has been since the 1970s. So that means that whatever price you pay, that land was in 1978, that's how much taxes you pay today. So let's think about Chevron, right? Land in Richmond has increased over 5 times since 1978. So if Prop 15 was passed in 2020, which was to close that loophole, over $18 million would have gone straight to our school district, and millions more going to local services like community centers, water treatments, and much more. Instead, Chevron and its associates fought tirelessly against community organizers to make sure that they did not have to pay their fair share, and to a community that they exploited for centuries. So by using scholarships, one-off checks, and nonprofit donations, which we know are just more tax breaks, they have tried to force the community to believe that they are going above and beyond for the health of Richmond. And today we're learning that that's so far from the truth.
Mm-hmm. They put so much money, that was fire. They put so much money behind like fighting so that they can do the bare minimum and leave it at that, you know, like even the ECIA grant, this modernization program, this agreement between the city and Chevron didn't come without a massive fight. They put a ton of money behind lawyers, lawsuits, for one, so they don't have to pay like the accurate amount of taxes that they should nowadays for what the property is worth, and like just not paying the city in general what they should be paying.
So let's listen to Eduardo talk about how they do this.
They have shareholders that they're supposed to provide dividends to, and that, you know, profit is their main concern. And I know that that they really don't have any allegiance to anyone other than themselves.
Yeah.
I know that they like to play financial games. You know, for instance, every 4 years, they like to take the city and the county to court, claiming that they overpaid on their property taxes.
What?
This is something they do every 4 years. They take the city and the county to court contesting their property taxes. And they were doing pretty good until the last time. And the last time and it's not even a court, it's a committee of people who decide whether or not, you know, the numbers fell out. But the thing is that I think Chevron actually spends more money contesting it than they do getting money back. And I think they do that because they want to establish who's in control. You know, and it's I think it's power plays.
And so that was Eduardo, City Council member Eduardo Martinez, really explaining the many different tax loopholes, the ways that they have lawyers on deck to combat and fight our city to pay their fair share in taxes. And we actually surveyed the community. One of the surveys questions that we said was, Chevron provides a lot of economic job opportunities for Richmond residents, and only 19 people strongly agreed with that statement. And then the third that we surveyed folks on was Chevron provides a lot of economic support for the city of Richmond overall, and 21 people, or 9.5%, said that they strongly agree. So many people understand that Chevron doesn't provide a lot of jobs to a lot of local folks, and we're going to have a workers episode in the future to go into what that looks like. And then also people understand that they supply some type of economic support, but in what degree? And hopefully, Alfredo, you can enlighten us on that.
That's like the massive part, like the big complication when like thinking of Chevron like going away or transitioning away from Chevron, is that they actually do in terms of our city budget, they are like a quarter of our city budget, damn near. They pay about $41 million to the city, but like that is a lot of money on its own. But think about like in the context of how much do they make a year? Not even Chevron as a corporation, they make $10 billion off of the refinery alone a year.
$10 billion, just our refinery, not
yeah,
wow.
I just out of the refinery, and out of all of that, they pay $41 million. Like, I'm not a mathematician, but that is damn near nothing in the context of $10 billion. As a corporation, they make like $215 billion. They make what I make a year in like 5 seconds, probably.
Yes.
And so like that goes back to this point of like, they make all of this money from extracting things from the community, but like, is that what we want? You seem to have some fire going off in your brain, Kendall. Do you want to touch on this?
Yeah, and it just also reminds me that like the whole way that corporations are able to grow and make a lot of money is by making sure the people at the bottom of the ring make as little money as possible so that they can reap most and all really of the benefits at the top. And so, that data point was really upsetting and really makes me think like right now, at least in Richmond and most cities in the US, people and companies in power send all and every plan, initiative, decision based on how to protect dominant industry profits. Because like Alfredo said, like if they're funding 25% of 24% of our city, like they need to protect those interests. So we're living in an economy that depends on taking resources from our land and neighbors as quickly and as cheaply as possible, despite any devastations it might have on human health or human rights in our community. This includes like overworking, underpaying, and hoarding wealth through not paying their fair share. And unfortunately, we're at a point where our cities and schools feel like they have to depend on these industries that do not value the literal life of Richmond residents at all. So I think that's why we need to shift to a resident empowering type of economy, maybe one where we care for each other and our well-being, one where industries that bring life to our environment are successful instead of draining it, and one where there is collective success instead of some for the select few. I think that's what we need to work towards, really.
And I think from what we've seen, that's really what the community wants, is not to be in a place where we are heavily reliant on Chevron and massive corporations, where we can be on our own in cooperative economies where we can thrive without them.
Absolutely. And that's what we heard from our community around what do they want. So let's go ahead and listen to Carrie share her thoughts, and Myra Diane, so Richmond Queen, wonderful Reina in Richmond, share their thoughts around this.
Oh, well, I'm sure they line the pockets of whoever they need to line. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that the mayor is deeply entrenched in that. Chevron provides all these different services in the community that, from a mayoral standpoint, I guess, you look at that and you say, we can't live without this money. So of course, they're the biggest participant in the community in terms of funding. I would imagine they are. It seems like they are from what I heard they are.
But I prefer for them to just fess up. Like they say, we did, this, you know what I'm saying? I prefer that. I don't want no resources funded by Chevron. That's the same thing as sponsorship. That's the same thing as us, being basically two-sided. You get what I'm saying? So again, either they're going to destroy themselves, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And fess up and that, you know what I'm saying? Say the truth, be responsible to the T. Or I believe that we should be people that are, you know what I'm saying? Obviously, of valor or whatever the word may be, but I just feel like we need to come together and say, no, thank you to your money. We'll create it on ourselves. We already are. Matter of fact, we just, wanted you guys to move out the way because unfortunately I can't, run my business if my people over here are dying. They're going to want to move away or something like that. You get what I'm saying? So my business is no good as well for business owners and people that are just, living here. But again, I would like those two things. We already, the people are already creating these resources. I prefer for it to be from the people, for the people, by the people. I don't, want nothing from Chevron, but for them to take responsibility and literally fess up and say, yes, we have been doing this because we're selfish and we don't care and we just care about the money. And, I mean, can they really take ownership in those words? I don't think so. You know what I'm saying? So their money is no good for me.
And that was the fire coming from Miss Myra Diane. And I just want to uplift what she's really talking about is instead of these extractive economies, really regenerative economies. And what does that look like? How do we diversify our local economy so that we are not simply depending on Chevron? And how are we creating economies that are not harming workers, not harming our community health and our planet, but instead restoring our health, restoring our community with regenerative economies that serve our local community, that heal the people and the planet, economies that are community controlled and not corporate controlled, and to create this self-determined community. And for me, the way that I see that is in multiple industries, supporting small businesses, supporting, cooperative, solar paneled, community-owned initiatives, wind power. I also have a love of cannabis and making sure that our Black and Brown folks that are the most harmed by historically by the prison industrial complex to be have reparations and be able to be the first ones that are the local business owners in the cannabis industry. So I see that industry. Where do you see us going in the future if we don't have Chevron here?
Yeah, I've been in conversations before with Sol saying that Richmond is a beautiful, coastal, diverse city. Like it really should be an epicenter of tourism and relaxation and recreation. But because of the exploitive nature of our economy, like we haven't been able to achieve that yet. But there's so many organizations and businesses that are actively trying to buy back our local economy and bring us into their vision of a collective and sustainable success. Rich City Rides is a co-op that promotes physical wellness, community uplift events, and all their profits and success are split amongst their employees and owners. There's Cooperation Richmond too. It's an organization that supports Richmond residents interested in starting their own collectively owned businesses. And right now they're working on a local grocery store. They help Rich City Rides. They're building up a performative and community space and even an upcoming co-op eateries. So even I'm working with organizations that are dedicated to taking land out of the predatory speculative market and putting it into the hands of local community members instead of for-profit hungry developers. So I think there are so many organizations and residents building a new future for Richmond, and I'm really excited to see our future together. So shout out to Richmond Land, and I'm excited to build.
Yes, I love that. I think that's what we all see really is not, before industry was here, we were an agricultural community. We were from the land, living with the land. Much before the if you think much before the Spanish were here, we were maybe not that far. But I see us going to this place where we are, for one, self-sustained off the land, where we are helping each other out. We are keeping each other fed, keeping each other safe, keeping each other healthy, without industry polluting our air and water and soil anymore. And that's where our community is going. That's what our community wants. And I think in the future, that is where we'll be. People over profit. That is what our community desires. That is what our community deserves. And that is where we'll be in the future, in the very near future. All of us here, all of the various, our Power Coalition partners are working for that. Richmond Land, APEN, all of these other orgs that are doing the work to have us there. So thank you for joining us for this episode. We're wrapping it up here. Thank you, Kendall, for joining us. This has been awesome.
Yes,
Wonderful
thank you, Kendall.
We're going to close up with Saeed. He's going to be our listen up voice. You've heard from him before. Saeed is always bringing the fire. So here's Saeed. Listen up.
We don't need you anymore, Chevron, and we can put somebody else here, or we can come up with our own businesses and create our own, shopping centers and things like that in order to bring that economy back to where we need it. So, I think it would be best if the whole city of Richmond, if we could walk away from Chevron, and Chevron could just walk away from us. You've done enough damage, 20, 30 years of damage, 40 years of damage. And I think a lot longer than that. Look, see, I don't even know how long. I'm saying I'm 34, so I know it's been around for 34 years while I've been there. So let's say 60, 70, 80 years, 100 years of damage. You guys need to leave. And it's not on us to leave because we were here. Like we're taxpaying citizens, and you guys are not. You're not here for us, and it's more of us than it is Chevron. So I think we should trump Chevron. Chevron should leave, and we can figure out what to replace that with. We can find so many other things to replace, school venues and things like that, and just things for the kids and, things for the culture. So I think it's so much more we can just replace Chevron with, and we'll be able to boost that economy back up in no time. It's just going to take all of us together, coming together and putting our minds as one and saying, okay, this is, we come together for this common goal. And it'll happen, man. I just think we as people have to really just hone in on our skills and kind of hone in on what we want, and then say, hey, we're going to fight until the end to accomplish it or achieve it. Love you, Richmond. Pride and purpose, and salute, man. Stay up.
And I know I ain't the hottest, but I promise Rich City I got us. Believe me, I got you. You got me, I got you. You got me, I got you. Hey, Rich City, I'll never let you go. You don't know that I love you, Rich. You don't know that I love you, Rich. Rich City, baby.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listening Project podcast. A special thanks to the Richmond Progressive Alliance for making this podcast possible. The RPA's goal is to take power back from corporations and put it into the hands of the people. To learn more, visit their website at richmondprogressivealliance.net. Thanks so much.